Somewhere in Arizona, there's a town where the ground has been burning for over 50 years, and the people who used to live there just left. The fire's still going. Welcome to the 9 weirdest towns in Arizona. Not weird like quirky coffee shop. Weird? Weird like why is there a town built entirely around a giant hole in the earth? Weird. By the end of this, you'll question whether Arizona is even a real state or just a fever dream with good tax rates. We've got a city designed to look like a single megastructure of the future. A desert town where artists turned an old mine into a tourist economy. A place so haunted that ghost tours are basically the main industry. And a settlement where the only thing outnumbering the residents is the number of "I saw a flying saucer" stories. If you make it to the end without subscribing, I'm legally obligated to assume you hate fun. Don't be that person. All right, let's get into it. Number 9. Lake Havasu City, the town that imported a bridge from London by accident. Picture the Arizona desert. Dry, brown, hot enough to cook an egg on a license plate. Now picture the original London Bridge sitting right in the middle of it, stretching across a man-made channel like it got teleported 4,000 miles and just decided to stay. That actually happened. In the late 1960s, a chainsaw millionaire named Robert McCulloch was looking to put his brand new desert development on the map. London, meanwhile, had a problem. Their famous bridge, the one that inspired the nursery rhyme, was slowly sinking into the River Thames. It couldn't handle modern traffic anymore, so the City of London did what any reasonable government would do. They put a historic bridge up for sale. McCulloch bought it for around $2.5 million. Then he spent millions more disassembling the entire bridge stone by stone, numbering every single block, shipping them across the Atlantic Ocean, through the Panama Canal, up to California, and then trucking them out to the Arizona desert, where they were reassembled like the world's most expensive piece of flat-pack furniture. Here's the part everyone loves. There's a long-running rumor that McCulloch thought he was buying the iconic Tower Bridge, the fancy one with the 2 Gothic towers that you see in every postcard. Instead, he got the plain, flat London Bridge. McCulloch always denied it. But the story refuses to die, mostly because it's a lot funnier if it's true. Whether it was a mistake or a master plan, it worked. The bridge turned a patch of empty desert into one of the most visited spots in Arizona. Today, Lake Havasu City is a real, thriving community of tens of thousands of people, a spring break destination, and home to a genuine slice of London plopped down in the Mojave. That's the kind of number that makes accountants cry, by the way. Millions of dollars to move a bridge to a place that didn't have a river to put it over. They had to dredge a channel just so the bridge would have water underneath it. The bridge came first. The reason for the bridge came second. But a misplaced English landmark is honestly one of the more normal entries on this list. Because this next town wasn't built to look like the past. It was built to look like the future. A future that never actually arrived. Number 8. Arcosanti, the city of tomorrow that's been under construction for over 50 years. About 70 miles north of Phoenix, off the highway, down a dirt road, there's a cluster of strange concrete structures rising out of the high desert. Curved domes, geometric arches, buildings that look like they were designed by someone who watched a lot of science fiction in the 70s. Because, well, they kind of were. Arcosanti is the brainchild of an Italian architect named Paolo Soleri. Back in 1970, Soleri had a big idea. He believed cities of the future shouldn't sprawl out across the landscape with highways and parking lots and endless suburbs. Instead, an entire city should be compact, walkable, and basically one giant connected structure. He called this concept arcology, a blend of architecture and ecology. And Arcosanti was supposed to be the prototype, the proof that humans could live a better way. The plan was ambitious. A self-contained town for around 5,000 people, all living inside an interconnected megastructure, growing their own food, minimizing waste, living in harmony with the desert. So how's that going, you ask? Let me put it this way. More than 50 years after construction began, Arcosanti has a population of somewhere around 50 to 80 people. It's reached a small fraction of its original vision. The grand city of the future is mostly a small artist community, a tourist curiosity, and a place that funds itself partly by selling handmade bronze and ceramic wind bells. And yet people still live there. Volunteers still show up to keep building it, decade after decade, slowly adding to a city that may never be finished. There's something genuinely beautiful about that. a town that exists in a permanent state of becoming, a monument to an idea that was maybe too big for one lifetime. If you're enjoying this desert tour so far, do me a quick favor and hit that like button. It tells the algorithm to show this to more people who appreciate a good, wait, that's real story? And we've got 6 more of them coming. Because while Arcosanti is a town stuck building its future, this next place is a town that refused to let go of its past. Number 7. Tombstone, the old west town that's too stubborn to die. You've heard the name, even if you don't know why. Tombstone is the site of the most famous 30 seconds in Wild West history, the gunfight at the OK Corral, where the Earp brothers and Doc Holliday faced off against a group of outlaws in 1881. 3 men died in about half a minute, and the legend never stopped growing. Here's what makes Tombstone weird. The gunfight was almost 150 years ago, but the town never moved on. At all. Walk down the main street today and you'll see wooden boardwalks, swinging saloon doors, men in cowboy hats and gun belts, and stagecoaches rolling past. Actors stage gunfights for tourists multiple times a day. The newspaper, the Tombstone Epitaph, is one of the oldest continuously running papers in Arizona. And yes, it's really called the Epitaph. There's a tombstone joke baked right into the town's identity, and they have leaned into it with zero shame. The town's official motto is, "The town too tough to die," and they earned it. Tombstone was a silver mining boomtown that, like most boomtowns, should have collapsed into a ghost town when the mines flooded and the silver ran out. Most towns like it did exactly that. They emptied out and rotted into the desert. Instead, Tombstone figured out it could sell its own legend. It turned its history into its entire economy. So now you've got this surreal place where a real town with real residents, a post office, and a school district also functions as a permanent 1880s theme park. The line between history and performance gets blurry. People aren't just visiting a museum. They're walking through a town that decided to stop time and charge admission. It's commercial, it's a little cheesy, and it absolutely works. Tombstone pulls in crowds year after year because there's nowhere else quite like it. But Tombstone survived by leaning into its story. This next town had a darker story, and it didn't survive at all. In fact, some people swear it was cursed. Number 6. Two Guns, the ghost town with a body count. Out along Old Route 66, east of Flagstaff, there's a collection of crumbling stone ruins, a rusted-out shell of what used to be a gas station, and the broken concrete bones of an abandoned roadside zoo. This is Two Guns. And, depending on who you ask, it's either the unluckiest piece of land in Arizona or the most haunted. The dark history goes back way before the town. Long before the highway, this spot near Canyon Diablo was the site of a brutal 19th century conflict, a massacre in a cave that left dozens dead. Local legend says the land was cursed from that day forward, and the body count that followed gave the legend plenty to work with. In the 1920s, as Route 66 brought a flood of travelers west, a man set up a trading post and a roadside attraction here to cash in. He built a zoo to draw in tourists with mountain lions and other animals caged along the highway. The problem was that the place seemed determined to destroy everyone who tried to profit from it. There were violent disputes. There was at least one mauling. There were fires. Owner after owner took a shot at making Two Guns work, and owner after owner walked away, broke, injured, or worse. The attraction was rebuilt multiple times. It burned multiple times. By the time the interstate replaced Route 66 and rerouted, traffic away Two Guns was finished. What's left now is a scattering of ruins slowly being reclaimed by the desert, with faded mountain lions lettering still ghosting across one crumbling wall. People who explore the ruins today report an unsettling feeling, like the place doesn't want visitors. Maybe that's just the natural creepiness of an abandoned zoo in the middle of nowhere. Or maybe after everything that happened here, the land really did decide it was done being lived on. I'm not saying it's cursed. I'm saying that an awful lot of bad luck found one tiny patch of desert, and at some point you stop calling it a coincidence. Now we're at the halfway point, which means it's time for the strangest entry on this entire list. This is the one I've been waiting to tell you about, and it has a name so blunt it almost sounds made up. Number 5. Why Arizona? A town literally named Why. This isn't a riddle. The town is named Why. W-H-Y. As in, why is this town called that? And the answer is genuinely just why. Down in the southern Arizona desert near the border sits this tiny unincorporated community. The story goes that the town grew up around a Y-shaped intersection where two major highways met. The residents wanted to name their new community after that distinctive Y junction, so they were going to call it Y. But there was a problem. At the time, Arizona state law reportedly required that all place names had to be at least 3 letters long. A single letter wouldn't fly, so the founders got creative and spelled it out phonetically. Y became Y. Problem solved, and a tiny piece of comedy was permanently stamped onto the map of Arizona. The kicker is that the original Y intersection that gave the town its name was later reconfigured by the highway department into a more standard T shape. So the town is named after a road layout that doesn't even fully exist anymore. The Y outlived the Y. Today, Y is a tiny desert outpost. A handful of businesses, an RV park, a gas station, some scattered homes, and the kind of population where everyone genuinely knows everyone. It's a gateway to a national monument and a popular stop for snowbirds escaping winter. But mostly it's famous for one reason. It's the town that answers a question with a question. Every road sign pointing to Y reads like the start of an existential crisis. And if Y makes you smile, you'll really love what comes next. Because this town also has an absurd name and a far more haunted reputation. It's a city that died, came back as a ghost town, and then got reborn a third time as something nobody expected. If you're not subscribed yet, now's the moment. We're heading into the back half of this list, and the towns only get stranger from here. Subscribe so you don't lose the trail. Number 4. Jerome, the mile-high ghost city that came back from the dead. Cling to the side of a steep mountain in central Arizona, and you'll find Jerome, a town that seems to defy gravity. The houses are stacked up the slope at impossible angles. Streets switch back above rooftops. Buildings have foundations on one street and front doors that open onto the street below. It looks less like a town and more like something that got spilled down a mountainside and froze in place. Jerome was a copper mining boomtown, and at its peak in the early 1900s, it was one of the largest towns in the Arizona Territory with a population that swelled into the thousands. It was loud, rich, and rowdy. So rowdy, in fact, that a New York newspaper once branded it the wickedest town in the West, thanks to all the saloons, gambling, and general lawlessness packed onto that mountainside. Then the copper market crashed, and the mines shut down. By the 1950s, Jerome had nearly emptied out. The population collapsed from thousands to fewer than 100 people. It became, by almost any definition, a ghost town. Empty buildings, boarded windows, a booming city left to rot on the side of a hill. But here's where Jerome pulled off its third act. Starting in the late 1960s and 70s, artists, hippies, and free spirits started moving into the abandoned buildings, drawn by the cheap real estate and the eerie beauty of a dying town. They reopened the old hotels and storefronts as galleries, studios, wineries, and shops. They turned a ghost town into an artist colony. And because Jerome had a century of mining deaths, fires, and hard living, behind it, it leaned hard into its haunted reputation. The old hospital up the hill is now a hotel that markets itself on its ghost stories. Ghost tours wind through the historic buildings after dark. The town's entire identity now sits at the intersection of abandoned mining tragedy and charming weekend getaway, which is a genuinely bizarre combination when you stop and think about it. So Jerome is technically a ghost town that's very much alive, full of artists selling paintings and buildings where miners died, perched on a mountain so steep the whole place looks like it's about to slide into the valley. Stubborn doesn't even cover it. Jerome found new life through art and ghost tours. This next town found new life through something a lot harder to explain. Some people call it spiritual energy. Other people call it the most successful marketing campaign in desert history. Number 3. Sedona, the town that built an economy on invisible energy. Sedona is, objectively, one of the most beautiful places in the United States. Towering red rock formations glow orange and crimson at sunrise and sunset. The landscape looks like Mars with better landscaping. On looks alone, it would be a tourist magnet. But Sedona didn't stop at looks. Sedona built an entire spiritual tourism industry around the idea that the red rocks are home to energy vortexes, swirling centers of spiritual power that are said to promote healing, meditation, and personal transformation. According to believers, certain spots around Sedona radiate energy strong enough that you can feel it. Some even claim the energy is so powerful at certain vortex sites that it twists the local juniper trees into spirals. Now, is there scientific evidence for invisible spiritual vortexes? No, there is not, but that hasn't slowed Sedona down even a little. The town has become a global capital of New Age spirituality. You'll find aura photographers, crystal shops, psychic readers, vortex tour guides, sound bath sessions, and retreat centers stacked one after another. People fly in from around the world to meditate on the rocks, get their chakras realigned, and search for spiritual awakening in the desert. What makes this genuinely fascinating is that it works regardless of whether the vortexes are real. Tourists arrive expecting a transformative experience. They hike through some of the most stunning scenery on the planet. They unplug from their stressful lives for a few days, and a lot of them leave feeling genuinely changed. Whether that's mystical energy or just the well-documented effect of nature and rest on the human brain, the result is the same. Sedona delivers. So you've got this town where the line between geology and spirituality has completely dissolved. A place where a red rock isn't just a red rock, it's a portal. Where real estate listings might mention vortex proximity as a selling point. It's one of the only towns in America where "I came here for the energy" is a perfectly normal thing to say out loud. You'd think a town selling invisible energy would be the hardest to believe on this list. But we've still got two left, and this next one involves a fire that has been burning underground, out of sight, for longer than most people have been alive. Number 2. The town sitting on Arizona's underground fires. Remember that burning ground I mentioned at the very start? This is it, and it's one of the strangest geological situations in the country. In parts of Arizona's coal country, particularly around the regions where coal seams run close to the surface, underground fires can ignite and then burn for an astonishingly long time. We're not talking days or weeks. We're talking years, decades. Once a coal seam catches fire deep underground, it becomes almost impossible to put out. The fire feeds on the coal, follows the seam through the earth, and just keeps going, slowly, silently, sometimes for half a century or more. You can't always see it, but you can find the evidence. Ground that's warm to the touch in the middle of winter, steam and smoke seeping up through cracks in the soil. Vegetation that won't grow because the earth beneath it is cooking. Sometimes the ground above an underground fire collapses without warning, opening up a smoldering pit where solid land used to be. For communities that live near these burning seams, it creates a genuinely unsettling reality. The land itself is on fire just beneath your feet, and there's nothing anyone could do to stop it. People have had to abandon homes and relocate because the ground became too unstable and too toxic to live on. Entire areas get fenced off and marked as hazardous, slowly hollowing out as the fire eats the earth from below. The most famous example of this phenomenon in America is a town in Pennsylvania that had to be almost entirely abandoned because of an underground coal fire. But Arizona's coal regions face their own versions of the same slow-motion disaster, where the desert hides a fire you can't see and can't extinguish. Think about what that does to a place psychologically. You can't run from a fire that's underneath you. You can't fight it. You can only watch the smoke rise through the cracks and decide how long you're willing to stay. It's the closest thing real life has to a horror movie premise, and it's just quietly happening in the American Southwest. All right, we've made it to number 1. And after burning ground and haunted ghost towns, you'd think nothing could top the strangeness. But the final entry might be the most "are you kidding me" town on the entire list, because this one runs on aliens. Before I tell you, this is your last chance to subscribe before the big finish. If this list has earned even one "no way that's real" out of you, that's the deal. You subscribe, I keep finding the weird stuff. Fair trade. Number 1. The desert outposts where UFOs outnumber the locals. Scattered across the wide-open Arizona desert are tiny communities that have become unlikely magnets for one very specific kind of tourism. People who are absolutely convinced the skies above Arizona are full of unexplained activity. And honestly, Arizona has earned the reputation. This is the state that experienced one of the most famous mass UFO sightings in modern American history, when thousands of people across the region reported seeing a massive formation of lights drift silently across the night sky in 1997. It became known as one of the most witnessed UFO events ever recorded, and to this day there's no fully settled explanation that satisfies everyone who saw it. That kind of history turns certain desert towns into pilgrimage sites. The combination of wide open skies, very little light pollution, vast empty stretches of land, and a whole lot of military activity in the region creates the perfect storm for skywatching. On a clear desert night with no city glow to wash out the stars, you can see an incredible amount of activity overhead. Satellites, aircraft, meteors, flares for military exercises. And if you're inclined to believe things that don't have an easy label. In these small communities, UFO culture isn't a joke. It's an identity and sometimes an economy. You'll find people who've kept logs of their sightings for years. You'll find gathering spots where believers compare notes. You'll find that the population of actual full-time residents can be tiny, while the number of reported sightings, stories, and visitors hunting for them keeps climbing. In some of these places, it's genuinely fair to say the flying saucers get talked about more than the neighbors do. And here's what I love about it. Whether or not a single one of those lights is actually extraterrestrial, the experience these towns offer is real. Standing in the middle of the Arizona desert at night, under a sky absolutely drowning in stars, with nothing but silence and that overwhelming sense of how small you are, you start to understand why people look up and wonder. The desert does something to the imagination. It always has. So there you have it. A town that runs on the possibility of aliens, sitting at the top of a list that also includes a misplaced London Bridge, a half-built city of the future, a frozen Old West theme park, a cursed ghost zoo, a town named Y, an artist colony of ghosts, a capital of invisible energy, and ground that's been on fire for 50 years. 9 towns, 1 state, and every single one of them completely, verifiably real. Arizona isn't just retirees and cactuses. It's one of the strangest, most fascinating places in America once you get off the main highway and start poking around the dots on the map that most people drive right past. If this video showed you a side of Arizona you'd never seen, you already know what to do. Subscribe for more because this channel is your daily dose of the most fascinating, weird, and surprisingly livable places across America. We do this every single day, and there are a lot more strange towns where these came from. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 9 would you actually visit? The haunted artist town? The energy vortex capital? Or are you brave enough for the one with the fire underground? Tell me in the comments. And if you ever drive through a town named Y, do yourself a favor. Stop, take the picture, and answer the question for me. Because honestly, after making this video, I still don't have a better answer than why not.